Oh, that's nice.
I always get happy when I talk to him. I had a situation with a spider and he helped me. Hey, everybody, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. Today's guest is a very popular regular on Chef AJ Live. She's not only board certified in dermatology, she's plant-based dermatologist, but she's also board certified in lifestyle medicine. And you always have so many questions for her when she comes on. Please welcome back, as beautiful as she is, brainy, Dr. Jessica Krant. You're one of my favorite people.
Wow, Chef AJ, this is, as you know, one of my favorite conversations I ever get to have. I just love coming on your show, and it's always an honor to be back.
Well, you don't need me. You should have your own show because you are so knowledgeable. And, we were talking a little bit before the show that in general, anytime we have a doctor on the show, there's lots of questions because people love asking doctors questions. And even if they're not the right specialty, they love answering questions. But sometimes people, like, not everybody's diabetic, not everybody has cancer, but everybody has skin, everybody. So there's always more questions than we can ever get to when we have a dermatologist on.
And it's true. And also I find that there is that whole slew of questions and confusion that people have about their skin. And because I'm also a lifestyle medicine doctor, it brings in an entire other world of healthy lifestyle factors and healthy lifestyle behaviors and how they affect not only the health of our hearts and our brains and our bones, but also our skin. And I have in digging deeper into all of this, I have really been excited to find how much evidence there is that living in a healthy lifestyle way, especially plant-based, directly helps skin health and is directly also anti-aging.
You know what I love is like, not every doctor agrees on everything. And especially because, we know that there's doctors that are recommending animal products and oil, but the plant-based doctors don't. But what's interesting is with dermatology, whether even a dermatologist is plant-based or not, you guys seem to agree on a lot of things. Like, for example, sun, for example. Like, I've never met a dermatologist that says, yeah, I just go out in the sun, you know what I mean? Like, there's some things in dermatology that it's just like everyone seems to agree.
Well, there's controversy in especially on the topic of sun. It's not really controversy, but there's variation in how tolerant dermatologists might be for the amount of sun exposure people get. And it's because we recognize that sunlight exposure to the blue wavelength of the sky have their own health benefits in general. So we don't want people to become hermits and not be active. So we like to promote healthy activity outdoors and, being in nature and getting out there, but not getting sun damage and sun burns and causing all of the things that people come later and say, can you please take my money and help me fix this? Something that they didn't need to have because it came from earlier sun exposure. And one of my favorite little tidbits to recall is that in a study trying to motivate young people, especially young women, to wear sunscreen, it turned out that fear of future skin cancer was not a big motivator. The biggest motivator, and what we were able to most use as a hook to get young people to understand the value of sunscreen, was the fear of aging and brown spots. So we use skin aging as a teaching tool to explain that all the sun you get now does matter, even though it doesn't show now. But like I said, we do want people to be active outdoors and getting exercise and being exposed to nature and that blue wavelength of light from the sky.
No, I didn't listen when I was younger, and I paid the price when I was older. But now I'm the other way. I mean, like I think I showed you that hat I wear. It's like the whole mask,
That was the hot pink.
Yeah, exactly.
Hat, right?
I mean, I look like the unknown comic, with the bag over his head because I'm afraid of the sun. I mean, I'm not afraid of it on the body, but it didn't do well by me.
Well, I grew up in Fort Lauderdale in South Florida, so I was beach girl, poolside, timing my tanning and rolling over and moving the bikini around so that I wouldn't have any tan lines, all of that, trying to be as tan as possible. My nickname when I was at summer camp as a teenager was the Bain de Soleil lady. And, you know, I don't, a lot of your audience might be too young to know who that is, but she was this famously extremely dark tan woman on the billboards for the Bain de Soleil company. And I was so tan that that's what I looked like. So I flipped completely the opposite when I started training in dermatology and I learned about what damage the sun's rays were actually doing to my skin. Even then, I suddenly became unable to just lie out in the sun for the purpose of getting tan. And I'm glad about that because this many years later, it's serving me well.
Yeah, it's funny because if you look at some of my earlier YouTubes, I was really dark, you know, and it's like, whoa, you know.
Right. And, you know, we have to get our eyes used to looking at this clear, bright skin and not thinking of it as pale, or, you know, people think they look sickly, but actually they look like they have a fresh glow. And that's true whatever your natural skin tone and skin color is. You know, there's a range of your fresh natural skin versus sun damaged skin.
Yeah, I think it's an addiction. I mean, at least for me it was, because there's something about the sun that's just like, you know, it's I don't know.
You know, it's not just a thought. It actually is an addiction. They have done many studies that show that people do get addicted to tanning. That's especially why tanning beds are so addictive, because they're like the crack cocaine of getting sun exposure. They're really very strong, very directed, very purified. And it turns out that ultraviolet rays interact with the retinas of our eyes and stimulate the endorphin cycle in our brain. So when we do get sun, we lie in the sun, we get sun exposure, we get ultraviolet radiation exposure, it actually stimulates our endorphin system, which is our enjoyment, our addictive chemical. And then that's why people in the winter, when the sun is away, can tend to sometimes get depressed because they don't have that endorphin stimulation from sun exposure.
Yeah, interesting. Well, speaking of sun exposure, it's in all caps, so I have got to ask it because I can actually see it. Monica said, can you ask what to pay attention to in choosing SPF sunscreen? And if I'm wearing that hat, I don't have to put sunscreen on, right? Or, I mean, can it get through the hat? I mean, the hat that's completely covering my face.
Okay. Let me try to answer that in two different parts. First part is sunscreen. Sunscreen is tricky because the most important thing is that it is a formulation that you will actually wear and that you don't mind wearing. And it can be a problem because some of them can feel like they peel off your skin. Some of them can make your eyes sting a little bit. Some of them may feel a little greasy. And if it's a formulation that you will just never truly put on a daily basis, that's already immediately no good. The American Academy of Dermatology recommends that we look for an SPF of at least 30. And I recommend really an SPF of at least 50 for the face. And what that means is that's sun protection factor. And it only relates to protection from UVB rays, which used to be the rays that they would say were only responsible for skin cancer. And they would say UVA rays were only responsible for tanning. We now know that both can be a factor in both. But the SPF number only in the United States, the SPF number only relates to the UVB protection factor. And that is a sort of a multiplier factor. In a lab situation where an enormously thick layer of sunscreen is applied, that number represents the multiples of time that it protects the skin from turning red in the sun. It's called the MED, the minimal erythema dose. In real life, the way we use sunscreen in real life on real humans, we basically never put on the amount that they are using for the testing. So even when I conscientiously put on SPF 50 sunscreen, I'm probably not getting an SPF 50 that would be measured in a lab. So that's why I like to say cheat upwards, because use a higher number than you're willing to accept having as your protection for the UVB. The UVA rays are the rays that tend to do more of the tanning, the damage to the collagen and the elastin, and tend to create the brown spots and all of that sun damage. So UVB alone is not enough to protect from, because I'm sure everyone on this, watching us now, cares a lot about the sun damage and the aging effects of the sun. In the United States, we only have the term broad spectrum to represent the fact that we're claiming that UVA is also protected against. So all sunscreens that we use should say broad spectrum. In Europe and in the United Kingdom, they have a star rating up to, I think, 5 stars for UVA levels of protection, but we don't have that here. So for now, it's broad spectrum, and it's as high of an SPF as you can tolerate in a product that is something you'll still wear. And put it on thicker than you think. And unfortunately, technically, according to the lab tests, we do technically need to reapply it every 1 or 2 hours to count on that number. So just remember that the quality of the protection is always degrading. That's a long answer for that one. But in terms of sun protective clothing, most of the good quality sun protective clothing, it has what we call a UPF of 50 or 50 plus, which is a ultraviolet protection factor. Technically, it should mean a similar concept to what the sunscreen SPF means. But if you can look under the clothing and see any light on your skin at all, it means that the rays are still getting through. So it's not 100% protection. It depends on what else is going on in your day. It's always ideal to have sunscreen underneath, or definitely on your face if you have just a hat on. And remember that if you're outdoors on the beach or somewhere walking around, if you can see the sunlight, like if it's a sunny day, there are rays bouncing around, and they are still coming probably up like from the sand or the water, and still could hit your face. So it depends how much energy you want to put to this. And like we said, there is a range of acceptable sun exposure, even among dermatologists, because we do want people to be active, feel comfortable outside, and have a good time, and even potentially get some vitamin D getting created in the skin. I personally have been taking 5,000 international units of vitamin D in a supplement every day for the past year, and my vitamin D levels are good. So even though I really don't get a lot of direct sun, I'm not concerned about my vitamin D levels in that way. I do recommend looking for the foods that are highest in vitamin D and taking vitamin D supplementation, rather than being somebody that seeks your vitamin D with the sun. I think I should take a break and stop talking for a
Well, but aren't we supposed to wear sunglasses too? Because I found out I have early cataracts, and the doctor says you have to wear sunglasses even when it's overcast.
Right. And I'm not great about sunglasses either. I wish that I had more of a habit. Wearing sunglasses protects our eyes in so many ways. One is, there used to be something called desert blindness that a lot of soldiers came back from, even World War II and Vietnam and Korea with, and other wars, where they would just be outside in bright sunlight for hours and hours at a time. And the heavy exposure of the ultraviolet radiation on their eyes actually created blindness and cataracts and other problems with the corneas of their eyes, the outer layer of their eyes, later in life. It's ultraviolet radiation. It is radiation. It is radiation. It causes radiation burns. It causes radiation damage. It does irritate and burn our eyes over the long run if there's a lot of excessive exposure. We also are concerned that ultraviolet radiation hitting the retinas in the back of the eyeballs may trigger those pigmented cells in the retina to turn into melanoma. That's normally we think of it as a skin cancer, but the other place in the body that has those melanocytes is the retina of the eye, and people get melanoma in their eye, and it is the same deadly melanoma that we can get on our skin. That's not even to mention the aging effects of the sun around our eyes. People who wear sunscreen and makeup around the skin of their eyes and wear sunglasses all the time reduce aging by a great amount.
Nice. Well, thank you. So there's lots of questions in the chat, but as always, if you send your question in advance, you get priority. So I'm going to start with that one. And here it is. This is from Karen. Oh, it's long, but I'll read it fast. My doctor follows a McDougall diet with no oil. I know she gets some salt through canned beans. She just recently used some maple syrup and date syrup to make dessert, but she does not have nuts or seeds in her diet, no plant milk. Her acne has gotten really bad recently. She's eaten this strict way for at least 4 months. She's watched all of the Nelson twin videos and used their books and uses their products. Her face actually hurts from the acne. It does seem to fluctuate during the month. She's taken meds for it over a year ago, but really wants to solve this problem without medicine. What can Dr. Krant recommend? When she washes her face, it feels like it's burning from being dry. Do you do telemedicine appointments where this can be addressed? We are in Ohio.
Oh, my heart goes out to your daughter. And unfortunately, right now, I'm only licensed as a physician in New York State. So I'm not able to do real telemedicine appointments for patients in other states. But, acne is very complex, and it's a little bit sneaky because sometimes we do things that we think will help the acne, and they actually damage our skin in a way that makes the acne flare up. So it's very hard to make a specific recommendation in this format. I'm also not legally able to make a specific medical recommendation for somebody who's not a patient, but I hear the comment about skin dryness and burning and irritation, and there are a lot of acne medications that are over the counter that really dry out the skin and create irritation. That irritation may trigger more breaking out. So I think it would be valuable to see a board certified dermatologist locally and see if they can work through a plan that is comprehensive. And I have to say that I see my acne patients once a month, if not more, because acne is complicated and it can take several months of very regular visits in person to figure out all of the factors that may be involved. It might not be something that can be entirely fixable by diet alone. Everybody has their own unique health milieu. And in a teenager, there can be normal hormonal fluctuations and things going on that would need to be evaluated by a doctor that may need to be addressed from the inside out in a way that would be tough to give a slam dunk answer here.
Okay, Meg, you don't know anybody in Ohio, do you? Well, Ohio's a big state. She didn't say what city, so yeah.
I can work with you, Chef AJ, afterwards to try to help recommend somebody. And I know that there are very, very brilliant plant-based doctors online who do have licenses in Ohio and are available for telehealth. So I'm sure that somebody will be able to help if it's not me.
That's fantastic. Thank you. All right. So now we will ask the questions in the chat in the order that they were received. So the first one from Kuka, advice on seborrheic dermatitis, please.
Seborrheic dermatitis is a very common, I would say almost normal condition that so many people have from teenage to adult. It's the medical term for what we think of as dandruff. And it's very common on the scalp, but it can also appear in other hair-bearing or areas of the skin that tend to be a little more oily. So seborrheic dermatitis is common in and behind the ears. It's common around the edges of the nose. It's common in the inner corners of the eyebrows. And for men, it can even appear on the center of the chest in an area that's hair bearing. Seborrheic dermatitis, the dermatitis means that the skin is flared up. Seborrheic means oily. So this is a condition where a common skin yeast that lives on everybody may overgrow, may become more populous, and that can trigger an irritation in the skin. That irritation creates redness, creates itching, creates flakiness. That flakiness is what we think of as dandruff. So there are different ways to address seborrheic dermatitis. One of them is to decrease the population of the yeast so that the whole cycle of inflammation goes down. And there are some over-the-counter medications that do that, like the zinc pyrithione that is in Head and Shoulders and in some Dove anti-dandruff shampoos. That's the most common anti-dandruff ingredient. Selenium sulfide is Selsun Blue, and ketoconazole is the classic antifungal medication that has made its way into Nizoral brand shampoo and the generics. There are zinc and sulfur soaps that you can buy either at drugstores or on the internet that you can use to wash your face for seborrheic dermatitis on the face. And it is also potentially valuable to have your zinc levels checked and make sure that you have enough zinc in your diet, because a zinc deficiency can also lead to a seborrhea-like condition. Now, not all red flaky rashes are seborrheic dermatitis. So of course, I'd like to just say that it may not be seborrheic dermatitis. If it's not getting better, it's worth seeing a board certified dermatologist. A lot of dermatologists and general doctors also sometimes use a little bit of a topical steroid to reduce the inflammation associated with seborrhea. I personally try to avoid using topical steroids on the face, so I try to do it without that. But in an emergency, that can be valuable. I just would not do it every day long term, because even a mild topical steroid used regularly can eventually damage the skin.
Thank you very much.
Am I talking too much, Chef AJ?
No, I love when the guest talks, honestly.
Okay.
I get tired of hearing myself talk. So no,
All right.
All right,
you just jump in if I'm rambling on too long.
I think you give very thorough answers, and that's why you're such a good doctor. So no, I appreciate this. It's like going to like a mini medical school course.
I know. I feel like I'm getting a chance to do a lot of good teaching here.
Yeah, no, I think it's fantastic. So here's a question from Susan. Is it, because I don't even know a lot of these conditions until you explain it. Like, for instance, I don't know what a cherry angioma is, but it sounds like it could be a drink. Is there anything to do to avoid them and also to remove them?
We dermatologists do not really know right now what causes cherry angiomas. That's they're almost magenta colored, if you remember your Crayola box, like bright, kind of a purplish red, little spots that appear on people's bodies. We don't really know what causes them. They do tend to be genetic, and they may have some hormonal component, but we don't know of a way to prevent them. We remove them by physically removing them. We just tend to burn them off with a little electrocautery, or we laser them off, or we may cut them off if they're a little bit larger. They do have a risk of bleeding if you try to take them off yourself. So I would just, leave them for the doctor. But they're not dangerous, and they don't turn into anything dangerous.
You know what I was wondering? I think all dermatologists, I think all medical doctors agree smoking is not good for anybody at any age for any reason. But what about vaping? Does that have any effect on the skin the way that, because people that smoke, they get those, around their lips, those lines, like as they age. Does vaping do that too?
I don't think we have enough data on vaping to answer that specifically, but I cannot imagine a single reason that vaping would be healthy. It was first sold as a healthier alternative to smoking, but it soon turned out that the chemicals involved in the liquid that are put with the nicotine or with the other cannabinoid type products that might be in the vaping are dangerous themselves, and were causing lung damage. People probably forgot that right before the pandemic, there was a slew of young people having terrible, scary, permanent lung damage and needing lung replacements from damage they were getting from vaping. So I don't even think about it for a second.
I know, it's just crazy to me when people join my program and I'm like, to lose weight. And I'm like, why do you even care when you're doing this? It's like, we should take care of that first. It's just beyond me that people.
Yeah. I think, you know, with weight loss and nicotine, and I know people must hope that they can lose weight and then maybe they feel better and they have the energy to get themselves off the nicotine, but nicotine helps, you know, it's a very addictive chemical. So I'm not surprised people think vaping is healthier and they try to go that way first, but I hope that we get off that trend soon.
Yeah, that's not good. Okay, so Pam says, do you know why B12 gives me acne cysts? Every time I take it, I get large, painful ones on my chin. What can I do about it? I'm not a doctor, but I would say maybe try a different brand because maybe it's not the B12, you know, because different formulas, right?
I am familiar with the risk of, you know, at least higher doses of B12 promoting acne. That is a real thing. So I would have to say maybe try a lower dose or try a different brand. From what I understand, the amount of B12 that we actually need to supplement is so microscopic that they don't even sell that low of a dose in the stores. So the smallest dose pill taken a few times a week may be enough, and maybe that will help the acne situation a little bit.
Thank you. Okie doke. Susan says, is there a particular sunscreen that you would recommend? I know you went into all the different SPF, but are you allowed to say brands? Because you're not affiliated with any of them. So
I'm not affiliated with any sunscreen brands right now. There are a few that are popular, but there are so many that are good. I say there are pros and cons with everything. And I was just about to say, you know, maybe try to pick a physical sunscreen like zinc oxide or titanium dioxide over a chemical sunscreen. But there are also potential controversy about the physical sunscreens as well, you know, getting into our bodies. So I say brands like Elta MD, MD Solar Sciences, Elastin has a lovely one, but I trust Neutrogena. I trust the drugstore brands as long as they are, you know, there was always a list, and especially the environmental working group, they put out a list of reliable, trusted brands that are a little cleaner. So I would say go by that list, and then whichever one has a formulation you like.
right, just a lot of people are ethical vegans, so I'm pretty sure Neutrogena is going to be tested on you.
Yeah, I had a feeling that was going to be a no-no. So the environmental working group list is a clean. They're good at rating the clean and cruelty-free brands. So that's what I would say.
Nice. This isn't a question, but I see a question in it, so I'm going to make it a question because Mabel says, since I was given biological drugs, it made my skin abnormal. My skin has turned hard. Wish it would return to normal. Have you ever heard of that happening? People on biologicals?
No, I don't know. I don't exactly know what she means by hard. It could mean so many things. And there are also autoimmune conditions that affect the skin directly. So it would be hard for me to say whether it was the condition itself or the biologic medication itself. And I would literally have to feel the skin to feel it to know how to try to address it. But I hope that she's able to find some help.
Great, thank you. Jeffrey says, what are your thoughts on the unhealthy chemicals in these sunscreens? They cannot possibly be healthy to put on our skin that gets absorbed into our bloodstream. I use zinc oxide.
Yeah. White zinc oxide paste that looks like white paste is the old classic. It is not micronized. It is not a nanoparticle. And that's why it sits on the top of our skin, and it works by physically reflecting the sun, and you can't see through it.
So and then that doesn't get absorbed.
It probably gets absorbed a little bit, but the larger the particle, the less absorbed.
That, I would wear that. Where do you get that? I don't care how I look. I mean, that'd be fantastic. Then I wouldn't have to wear that hat.
You would have to have your whole face covered with white paste.
I would do it. I remember,
you know, honestly, where you get that nowadays is in the baby care aisle, because it's basically diaper paste, zinc oxide, 40%.
I don't want people teasing me saying I got diaper paste on my face. But I remember when I was little, I used to go to day camp, and the lifeguard was really, really fair-skinned guy. His name was Don. He was redhead and like fair skin, and he always had it on.
Right. So they had that, when I was young growing up, everybody would have the white paste on. And then they made it fun, and they made it like hot pink and different bright colors. But that old fashioned white zinc oxide paste would be the gold standard for protecting from the sun. Anything that we can see through that's still protecting us has some chemicals in it. Anything that is completely natural, like raspberry seed oil, it's not protective enough to really be protecting us. So the sunscreen industry is still working on a perfect formulation that's totally natural, totally stable, but still completely protective. And right now it doesn't exist. So the answer to how to not absorb the chemicals that are in some of these products, even the better products, is to do it more with the clothing and with staying out of the direct sun in the hottest part of the day. Stay under shade between 10 and 3, and wear the sun protective long sleeves and the hats and all that stuff.
How do you, is it easy to take zinc oxide off?
It depends on the brand probably, but it can be ointment. It can be like greasy. So it can be pretty thick. It's meant to waterproof babies' rear ends so that they don't get diaper rash. So it's pretty adherent intentionally.
Wow. Well, it might be worth it. I'll check it out for sure. Lisa wants to know, is spray tanning okay?
Spray tanning is also a chemical, and technically it would probably get absorbed a little bit into the skin. We don't really have any direct data that it's dangerous in any known way. I do think that we doctors agree that breathing in the spray tan mist is dangerous to our lungs. So if it's really important, when you go into those booths, there's you potentially breathing in a lot of chemical. If you can avoid that, having it on your skin is not as bad as some other exposures.
Great. Thank you.
That said, I would like to say, I would like to promote a culture of everybody getting more used to feeling beautiful in their natural colored skin, no matter what color that skin is, and not feeling that we need to seek the appearance of looking tanned. If we can get ourselves healthy from the inside out and have a natural glow with a little natural flush in our cheeks and not feel like we have to look tan, to me, that's better.
Yeah. Well, I think it was like, they made us feel like that you were better looking if you had a tan. I mean, I remember the song in the 60s, tall and tan and dark and lovely, the girl from me. But, but people can look really beautiful, like light skin too. Look at Victoria Moran, she doesn't go in the sun. She looks amazing. Right.
She's beautiful. Coco Chanel is famous for really being the first social icon to make being tan a social status. Before that, being tan had a different cultural connotation. Being tan meant you were somebody that worked mostly outdoors, and the more socially elite people were pale. And Coco Chanel made it cool and sophisticated to be tan. So really from the 50s and 60s into the 70s, that's when looking tan became associated with looking better. But I want to undo that now.
Great, thank you. Melissa says, how bad is it to sleep on your stomach or side for wrinkles?
I don't have a scale to measure that on. And it's, I don't think there's ever been a study that compares directly the same person sleeping on their side or stomach or sleeping on their back. Getting sleep and getting high quality sleep for many, many hours every night is one of the most important factors in our longevity and in our overall health, not to mention in our appearance, because beauty sleep is real. They have done scientific studies. So if you can only sleep through the night on your side or on your stomach, I vote for doing it. There's a camp of people who feel that they want to sleep on their backs so they don't fold their skin at all. And if you can do that, great. You just add to the, the arsenal of tricks you're using. But I don't really have a number for how bad it is to sleep that way. I'll tell you that it has a lot to do with how much sun damage you've already done to your skin, because very young baby-like skin that has not been degraded by sun damage does not wrinkle very easily. So kids and babies can sleep in folded positions, and when they wake up, they don't have a permanent line in their skin for 6 hours. When your skin is already more damaged by the sun, excuse me, it can hold that crease and hold those wrinkles longer. So you can judge for yourself based on your own skin.
Well, speaking of permanent lines and wrinkles, what can I do about the ones here and these? Does this thing work?
Those Jade Rollers, they are fun and they are a beautiful design. They work in two ways. They work by helping lymphatic massage and circulation. They may help to move fluid out of the skin and let healthier blood back into the skin and just maintain healthy circulation, which is always great for us. Stretching the skin a little bit can also trigger collagen formation when we stretch the fibroblasts that are under the skin surface in the dermis. Those little cells, they look like little pieces of candy. When we stretch them a little bit, they feel that stretch, they read as a signal that there is tension or damage and it's time to make more collagen. So this is where the Jade Rollers and the face massages and the facial exercise camp comes in, stimulating those fibroblasts to kick in and make new collagen. The other reason that Jade Rollers work is that they are soothing and they are a little self-care ritual and they are stress reducing. And if you feel like you have a regular routine of self-care that is stress reducing, it's healthy for us also in general, because stress causes aging. So finally, if you keep them cold, you may temporarily shrink the blood vessels in the surface of your skin that may depuff a little bit faster than would normally happen during the day. So they're fun and they're useful, but I would not say that they are a magical tool and that the jade itself is importing some secret anti-aging power into you.
Well, do you have any treatment for marionette lines and crow's feet other than, Botox and fillers? I mean, anything more vegan, natural?
No.
I don't like that answer.
That I just want to give that headline answer before I say that the dynamic wrinkles, the wrinkles that we get, the creases that we get from facial expressions are very hard to undo because they're really being created by the muscles. We don't have them when we're young because our skin quality is thicker and juicier and more rubbery. And as we get older, the skin naturally thins and it becomes less rubbery and juicy. So any folding tends to crease in a little bit more. So not folding the skin in those areas to begin with would actually prevent the lines. Like if we were to smile and not crinkle our eyes, we might almost never get lines there. As we get older, our brow line comes down and it kind of squeezes this area a little bit. So it makes that area prone to getting those lines a little bit more. Other than taking care of our skin quality with moisturizing, with avoiding sun, with constant attention to sunscreen and sunglasses, I don't think that there's a slam dunk answer for that. Now, in terms of plant-based anti-aging, for people who are thinking that vitamin A derivatives like retinol are not natural enough, there is a new plant-based ingredient that is being touted as being similarly effective to retinol called bakuchiol. It's a plant-derived potential like cousin of the retinoid. So that may work like a retin-A or a retinol over the long term. We'll see as more data comes out, but that's the new kid on the block in that arena.
Nice. Thank you. Let's see. Sarah says, I have spots on my face, especially around my mouth and between my eyebrows. Any special advice? I'm 100% whole food plant-based. She didn't say what kind of spots, how big, what color. So maybe we need more information.
Well, I'm just imagining one potential scenario, which is that if there are brown spots on the upper lip and in the sort of frown area of the forehead between the eyebrows, that may actually be melasma. And melasma is that very stubborn, different type of pigmentation that is not just sunspots called lentigos. Melasma is hormonal, it's genetic. It tends to have problems with pigment that are deeper layers in the skin. And it's not that easily removed by a laser or even just by a skin cream. Melasma is really complicated. Sometimes we need a little bit of a bleach temporarily. There are other products out now that things like kojic acid and tranexamic acid that can help to lighten melasma. But the main issue with melasma is that it tends to only come out with sun exposure. There was a study that showed that people who wear, say for example, extremely thick sunscreen and makeup, and the sun literally never gets to their skin, the melasma faded by itself. So it just proves that a huge feature of melasma is always ultraviolet radiation exposure. And we now know that it's not just UVA and UVB that trigger melasma, but it's also visible light. And that is something that is more recent science. It's not just the ultraviolet invisible rays, but it's also indoor light. It is light at your desk, light at work, light at home. So wearing sunscreen indoors and out is really a must if it's melasma and we care about fading it as naturally as possible.
Wow.
And who's going to do that? That is so tough.
Oh my God. Why can't we just outlive all our medical problems
I'm sure people are not having so much fun today because I have all this bad news.
I know, you're really like the Grim Reaper, aren't you? I'm just kidding.
I mean, these are tough. You know, the reason these questions always come up is because these are the ones that everybody has and everybody struggles with. And they're also the ones that doctors and dermatologists do not have great answers for. So it's no wonder that these are the things that people are still struggling with.
But you know, what I'm hearing a lot in what you're talking about is like, you know, when we deal with anybody with a lifestyle disease, there is something about when you're younger, you just don't think you're going to, you know, because I used to smoke. I mean, I'm embarrassed to admit it. I never drank alcohol, thank God. But when you're younger, you just think that you're going to get away with things, that laying in the sun with baby oil when you're 11 in Florida, it seems like a good idea at the time. You're not, I wasn't thinking that I was going to be 61 and you know what I mean? And I think that's the same thing when people eat crappy food. We don't think about the future. And I wonder, you know, I don't know how you can, you know, you can't scare somebody straight really necessarily.
Well, I think, you know, I'm actually starting a new venture in lifestyle education and how it relates to healthy skin and anti-aging. And I am trying to figure out, it's funny, as we speak, who my real target audience is. And some people are saying, oh, it's definitely women who are in their 40s and 50s, you know, maybe early 60s. And other people say, no, it's women in their 30s because they're really starting to be aware and they're ready to be preventing. And then I spoke with a young woman who was 23 and she said, oh no, it's me and my friends. We know now that we have to prevent. And we also know that eating plant-based and living in this healthier way is better for the planet. And we really care about the planet, and they care about the animals. And so I think it's everybody. I think now that message is really spreading out to be able to be adopted by younger people too.
Cool. Thank you. So Gina says, is mineral powder sunscreen as effective as lotion, and does it last on the skin as well?
If mineral powder sunscreen is applied very thickly, yes, it does work. But nobody wants to really be applying it as thickly as would be needed to be relying on it fully. I would say though that if that's what you feel comfortable with, go for it. It is a real sunscreen. It does work. It's hard. It has to be applied evenly, and it has to be applied pretty robustly to be meaningful.
Wow. So Susan wants to know, what do you do for wrinkles on the hands? I think we're supposed to wear sunscreen on our hands too, or even gloves when we go outside.
Yeah. The sunscreen on the hands is tough, especially these days with the coronavirus and people trying to be careful about washing hands even more diligently than usual, because we tend to wash sunscreen off. But yes, we're supposed to not put our hands in the sun. Wear those old fashioned driving gloves, nobody wears that stuff anymore, but driving gloves and those little ladylike white gloves that women used to wear would be great to have right now. Undoing damage on the hands is like undoing damage it's more like undoing damage on the neck and chest than the face, because the skin of the hands and the skin of the neck and chest are thinner and they don't have as many oil glands as the face. The face actually recovers well and responds well to anti-aging procedures because the oil glands in the skin are what trigger healing. Neck, chest, and hand skin don't have those oil glands. So we have to be more gentle in the procedures we do. And we can do things like lasers, chemical peels, and using retinols and retinoids or the bakuchiol products to try to trigger cell turnover and get to that younger skin. It helps. And then sunscreen.
Is there any part of the body that it's okay to be in the sun? Palms of our hands, maybe?
I don't really have a real answer for that. There's no part of our body that, if we're worried about sun damage and that, we probably should put the parts of our body in the sun that normally don't see the sun at all. So nobody will see them when we're wearing clothes.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Shoshana, who has been a guest on the show, is going to be on again when her new book comes out, says it's so confusing. You don't want the sunscreen to be worse than the sun in terms of toxicity.
As of now, for dermatologists, most of us feel that the damage we can do to ourselves with the sun, with skin cancer, which is truly deadly, is worse than the theoretical damage from the chemicals of the sunscreens. We don't yet have proof that sunscreens used the way people normally use them have directly caused illness in a person yet. So we're really promote evidence gathering and rigorous formal science, because a lot of conclusions have been thrown out into the media that really don't have any true scientific evidence. So as the evidence gets collected, and the FDA is supposed to review and update its sunscreen rulings, but it hasn't done it yet. I still feel that it's important to avoid sunburn. And if you really care enough to want to avoid, aging and sun damage, then wear the hat and wear the clothing.
Wow. Thank you. Connie says, my nose is red. I keep hoping whole food plant-based SOS will help, but so far not yet. And I do not drink alcohol.
Rosacea comes in many forms, and rosacea is a really complex skin condition that we partially understand, but do not completely understand. If somebody's nose has been red for a long time, it may be that some of the blood vessels there are permanently dilated. And even if a diet is going to reduce inflammation and reduce the tendency for the general rosacea to flare, it might be valuable to actually have a treatment with a laser that can reduce some redness, the redness at baseline. And a dermatologist would be able to evaluate that. But there are some people who just genetically tend to have a red nose, and we don't exactly understand why for everybody.
No. Thank you. Gail says, what else do you take with vitamin D to help with absorption?
I don't really think about it. I guess I take it with my meals. I don't know if I understand the question. I take 5,000 units, so I'm probably taking a little higher dose, and that might absorb enough to work for me.
Okay. Linda says, I thought one could get toxic levels of vitamin D supplementation.
One can. It's not easy, but I do, I recommend having your doctor check your levels once or twice a year just to make sure you're not in that camp. It would be easier to get a toxic level if you were doing like the 10,000 unit supplements that your doctor would give you. But I happen to be taking 5,000 a day because my vitamin D was very low. And I also read that it's a little bit protective against the coronavirus. So I wanted to make sure that I was not messing around with it. So I've been taking 5,000 most days for a year, and my vitamin D level was something like 40 something. So, up to 75 is considered aiming for about the right level. Most of us live around 30, or mine used to be lower. So for me personally, it has been okay to do 5,000. I always would say, get your levels checked with your physician just to make sure that everything is safe.
Great, thanks. Yeah. Alyssa says, do we need to expose our skin to sunshine to get vitamin D, or do we get it through our clothes?
Clothing is a little bit protective and could be quite protective. The darker and thicker the clothing is, the more it blocks the UV. So if you're wearing a white t-shirt and you pick it up and you can see that your skin has some sunlight on it, that's about an SPF of 2. So you're still getting a little bit of vitamin D through a white t-shirt. But if you're wearing a thick, dark piece of clothing or those sun protective fabrics, they don't really allow the sun in at all. So in terms of getting your vitamin D that way, I don't think you could rely on it.
Great. Sarah hopes we'll talk about perioral dermatitis. I don't know what that is. So
perioral dermatitis, periocular dermatitis, and sometimes it comes around the nose too. So it's all of the little orifices. So the overall global term is periorificial dermatitis. So you could see it written all those different ways. Perioral is the most common. We think of it as like a cousin of rosacea. It's mostly an inflammatory condition that can be very stubborn. It masquerades as a little bit like acne. It can look a little bit like a little seborrhea. It can look a little bit like a contact allergic dermatitis. And so far, we don't know of one single trigger for it, but it responds to treatments like for rosacea, mostly anti-inflammatory, trying to remove any irritants in the skincare regime. Sometimes it does require a short course of oral antibiotics, temporary short course, to force the inflammatory cycle to break. And a long list of other topical medications that your dermatologist could help you go through. But I will say that we never know exactly which medication is going to work for any one person. We sometimes cycle through a few before we get to the one that works for you.
Nice. Thank you. There's so many questions. You might have to come back. I know you're scheduled in July, but
I am always excited to come back whenever.
Almost see you every week. I'm blown away by the amount of questions we get, and I don't know why people don't send them in advance. Then they get priority. So
You know, you have often said I should have my own show. And if I do, Chef AJ, I hope that one day you will come be my guest.
Well, I can be your techie guy. I'll just run it. I don't need to be
Oh,
seen.
wow.
I'll help you do it. I actually prefer being on the other side of the camera more than in front of the camera if I have a choice. So here's a question for Chris. Get flaking right between the eyebrows, no place else. What causes this?
I don't know if Chris was here at the beginning. One of the first or second question we talked about today was about seborrheic dermatitis. Without seeing Chris and not being Chris's doctor, I can say that this might be a case of seborrheic dermatitis, which is a little patch of facial dandruff that can happen with this overgrowth of a common skin yeast that's normal for everybody. But some people get a little sensitive to it, and that's a common location for it. Increasing zinc in the diet, using a zinc or sometimes a sulfur soap can help. And sometimes when people have a little bit of a seborrhea on the face, it turns out that they may also have some dandruff in the scalp. And I have to say, I'm noticing that more and more with everybody lately because this trend of organic, sulfate-free, really gentle shampoos is not killing the yeast on people's scalps, and it is not degreasing the scalp the way normal shampoos do. So people are coming in with heads full of seborrhea and dandruff and having it on the face and not even knowing that they kind of are doing it to themselves by under cleaning the scalp a little bit.
I heard of a thing about I was reading something about not even to use shampoo anymore. They call it co-washing, where you just use conditioner. And then I've had other doctors on, like GI doctors, that say, oh, we wash too much. Don't wash your hair every day. Don't wash your skin every day. So how do you know who to listen to?
You know, there's a healthy balance. And when we overwash, we do disrupt our natural microbiome and the balance of the healthy microbes, the healthy bacteria, healthy yeast, healthy fungi that actually do live on our skin. And, you know, the skincare world is actually becoming more aware of this, promoting healthy balance and not trying to kill off everything. So washing less may have its place, but really extremely underwashing can promote things like seborrhea, which is not dangerous, but you know, you don't really want it either. So we have to find a balance.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, where do we go next? Awake Kate says, does our skin ever need a break from all the lotions, creams, and serums we use, like giving it a chance to breathe? I got to say, you know, I've been going live every day since March 20th of last year. I'm almost at 500 episodes. And I loved when I had to run the summit this year, the Truth About Weight Loss Summit, because 8 of the 9 days I didn't have to go live with video. It was
right.
It was pre-recorded, and the part that wasn't, it was audio only. And it was great. Those 8 days, nothing on the face. I loved it.
Right. Like I said, you know, over treating the skin can throw off our natural healthy microbiome balance and disrupt we have a layer on our skin called the acid mantle, which is a slightly acidic pH that helps control infections and keeps our moisture balance healthy. And when we wash too much and do too much, it throws that off. So I'm all for skin breaks and skin vacations. Sometimes, you know, it's sometimes better than washing. Some people wash 2 or 3 times every day. That can be excessive.
Yeah. If we could just get rid of it would be a level playing field. It's like nobody wore makeup, you know, then, because you know, I do look better with it, I think, and feel better with it. I don't wear it all the time, and I wear varying degrees, but I wish we could feel as good in our skin with nothing on, at least, or me. Maybe I'm just speaking for me.
I agree. Well, we'll see how our society develops after this pandemic, when everyone's been home all the time. You know, maybe we'll come out and say, you know, let's simplify. We have to simplify everything, please. Like, let's just get real.
Well, that's one of the things I love about wearing a mask, is like, only, you know, it's like less need for makeup. Nobody sees your face. It's kind of cool.
Right.
So we'll see. So Becky says, are there any new advancements for vitiligo? Maybe you can explain what vitiligo is.
I can. And then I'm so sorry, Chef AJ. I may have to.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, I was just going to write in the chat, when do you want to stop? So you can always come back.
I would love to come back. Vitiligo is an autoimmune condition where the body's immune cells decide that the pigment producing cells, the melanocytes, are foreign, and the body's immune system attacks the melanocytes from underneath. It is a really tricky, complex condition that can even be genetic and inherited. And we don't really have a great comprehensive answer for it. Our best approach is to try to stop the immune attack from the outside in with anti-inflammatory topical creams with ultraviolet treatment. Actually, in this case, the ultraviolet rays reduce the skin's immune activity. And for vitiligo, that's helpful. And I don't know of any for sure lifestyle management treatment for vitiligo, but I do think there may be some evidence out there that reducing inflammatory foods and reducing stress may help to reduce the immune attack on the skin.
All right. Well, you're going to have to come back. You're scheduled for Saturday, July 10th, but if I get an opening in advance, and I may actually have a cancellation next week, but I think only weekends work for you, we can have you back sooner.
Anytime. It's always an honor and so much fun to see you.
Yeah, who knew there was just so many questions and still so many left unanswered. So guys, save those questions, send them in. Thanks so much for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back tomorrow when my guest Hope Ware is going to be doing a wonderful cooking demo, making an incredible grain loaf and spicy barbecue sauce. Thanks again, Dr. Krant. Take care. Bye-bye.